Welcome, everybody, and welcome to my show series, Rooted with Rey. I'm Rey Perez, and I am lucky today to have a guest from Costa Rica, a broker in Costa Rica, Allen Lungo, who's become a friend of mine. He's with Costa Rica Paradise Properties. And in the United States, I hear a lot of folks talking about wanting to live or invest in other places in the world. What I'm trying to do is connect the right people with them that will do them right and be able to help them with whatever direction they may want to take. And Costa Rica is a big popular one on the list. So today we're going to be talking to Allen, who is not only a broker for Costa Rica Paradise Properties, but he's also part of the Real Estate Without Borders group. He's an international realtor and a certified international property specialist. He's also a member of the GLBTQ Real Estate Alliance, and many other associations. He keeps very busy, I can see, with his associations here in Costa Rica and the world. Today we'll be talking about why Costa Rica, why that might be a great country to live or invest or retire in. Also, some professional practices, and I think Allen may be talking to us about some particular properties that may be available that may be of interest to folks as well in his presentation. Allen, welcome.
Thank you, Rey. It's really been a privilege to speak to your program and your audience. I've lived and worked in Costa Rica for the last 20 years. It was a personal choice to leave the United States for sort of energy reasons and a big life change. And I'm very glad I did. I have no regrets. And I'm really glad to share why I love this country. And if your audience is thinking of relocating or retiring, I would suggest they give it serious consideration. So we'll go through the topics on the screen right now. We'll try and be as brief as possible. The presentation is unbranded, and if you'd really like a copy of your own, you can communicate with Rey and arrange it either with him or through me. Okay, just in case you're unclear, Costa Rica's location is in Central America. It's considered an isthmus, a thin connection between North America and South America. It's actually somewhat located conveniently as sort of a crossroads of the hemisphere. Because I get this question frequently, how big is the island? I want to let you know it's not an island. It's a country connected to Panama on the south and Nicaragua on the north. And it's close to the equator, which makes the weather just about perfect all year long, with two oceans, one on each side, keeping the temperatures very temperate and very pleasant. It's slightly smaller than West Virginia, and the Costa Rican population is about 5 million. You can see the statistics there about per capita income. And because of the inbound foreign interest, investors, people relocating, economy here grows every year. And because there's not a lot of use of mortgages and debt, there have never been any financial crises based on financing. It's important to know the energy in the atmosphere is completely different because everyone in Costa Rica thinks they're on the same team. It was founded by large families from Spain. The family tradition is very strong, and there aren't a lot of factions vying, competing for resources or whatever. It's all about making Costa Rica better every single year. Here's a close-up map of the country with some highlights. On the upper left corner where it says Playas Flamingo Potrero, this is where I'm speaking to you from. This is the Northwest Pacific corner of Costa Rica, which came into prominence in the last 20 years because a second international airport opened at the yellow dot you can see next to the town of Liberia. It's really important for developing countries that have a great interest in visiting them to be able to have people have the ability to land here. And that airport now has millions of visitors pouring through it every year by itself. In addition, you can see the orange dot in the central part of the country. That's the capital, San Jose, and that is the original international airport, which is also very busy as well. Other points of interest, you can see different names. Monteverde in the Pacific Mountains. It's a nature preserve of sorts. You can get the rainforest experience there. Nosara is another beach town, but sort of evolved as a celebrity hideout from Hollywood. And Santa Teresa Malpais down at the point of my province, which is called Guanacaste, you can see the word there, has been adopted by sort of the international jet set. So it's new and trending. On the other side, you can see Limon is the biggest city on the Caribbean side. It's more of a working town. It's where a lot of shipping comes through, but there's also equally beautiful beaches. The sunrises are beautiful there. We have the sunsets on our side. And the point of the overall country is because it's small and there's oceans on both sides, sort of mediating the weather, and the oceans themselves are always 80 degrees. That's why the weather is so consistently nice in Costa Rica. And last, the southern zone down near Panama is also sort of new territory. People are discovering it with new developments, particularly the recovery of the old shipping town of Golfito. Although it rains there more, if you like sort of more of a humid environment, you might want to look there. So my point with clients is to, number one, even though I'm a realtor, don't get enamored with a listing online that you think you've fallen in love with. Come to Costa Rica, determine the zones you'd like to visit based on your lifestyle and the weather. And then if you visit the zone and you decide, yes, this is my spot, trust me, there'll be something for sale that you'll want within a few kilometers.
One of my questions is there areas that more of Americans tend to be migrating to at this juncture, or is it spread out amongst all these, sounds like beautiful areas?
The Pacific Coast attracts the most visitors and new residents and retirees from North America. The
Okay.
US is the number one source of visitors and people relocating. Canada is second, and France is third. Costa Rica is the number one outbound destination from France. And for something I don't understand yet, but I certainly can see why they think it's beautiful, Europeans seem to favor the Caribbean coast. On the Pacific side of the country, which is where I am, has evolved to the point where I do business in English all day. All the documents are in English. The lawyers all speak English. And so no one has to worry about a foreign language problem if they're coming here to invest. Okay, why is Costa Rica so appealing? And these are things that are published, surveys, et cetera, which I've just put onto one slide. Costa Rica is usually the number one global vacation destination. That goes back and forth between Costa Rica and Hawaii, depending on the year. In my own experience, I moved from Chicago. I can be in Costa Rica from Chicago in 4 hours and 20 minutes nonstop. Hawaii is 9 hours. So that also added to the appeal of Costa Rica coming from the Midwest. Costa Rica currently is the number one global retirement destination for Americans. Portugal is number two, and Portugal and Costa Rica go back and forth on that in different surveys. An interesting statistic published by the government of Costa Rica is that corporate relocations out of China, Costa Rica is the number one destination for them when companies decide the environment in China is getting too risky for them. We have a lot of foreign companies with bases of operation here, call centers, because we line up with the central time zone in the US, and people speak English very well here. And so there's a lot of opportunity for Costa Ricans to get jobs with foreign companies and have better lives themselves. In addition to all those rankings, as a lifestyle choice, it is a recognized blue zone for longevity, particularly in my province. The lifestyle here is, I won't say it's rugged, but it's active. You're outside a lot, you're doing a lot of things, you keep moving, you're eating healthier, and of course the weather isn't a challenge at all. There's a focus on sustainability and environment here, which I think everyone understands. The country should be carbon neutral very shortly. It's been a goal for the last 5 years. And their history is such that they're committed to peace, equality, and individual rights and access to healthcare to such a degree that these are the priorities of the federal government, which
Wow.
is why I'm enjoying it so much. There's a lot of recovery resorts as well.
Mhm.
So people can, even if they're not going to move here, they can get their life sort of back on track if that's one of their priorities. Sort of overview aspects of Costa Rica. Obviously, I mentioned the environment is a priority. 27% of the country is park or officially protected. We are on 80% renewable electricity because we have very generous resources with the volcanoes for hydroelectric and geothermal and wind. There's many dams for the rivers that flow from the mountains. And so we don't add to any of the carbon pollution of the planet from this country. The air is clear and fresh every day. It is on the Ring of Fire, so there are earthquakes. Not too severe, not real often, but there is a little shake every once in a while. I lived in LA for 10 years, so it's not even as bad as Los Angeles. The tourist feature and sort of the wellness element of visiting hot springs is also easily accessible, especially around the Arenal volcano near Lake Arenal. It's quite a nice vacation stop if you're going to plan a trip to Costa Rica. The other priorities they have to, as evidence of their positive perspective, is there's no carbon or oil extraction here. There's no oil wells, there's no mines, there's no nothing. The bad news about that, it makes things a little more expensive because all the petrochemical things are imported. But as a commitment to the environment, it's more important than the price of gas. And they recently just banned hunting and they closed the zoos. And the animals in the zoos are in a retirement facility in the country where they'll live happily and cared for until they pass. The weather, I've mentioned this before. It's interesting because it comes from the east. If you're in North America, you know the weather comes from the west. It's the wind track from Africa that generates the hurricanes, but they never hit Costa Rica. They always turn north before they get here. The closest they come is to hit Nicaragua, which is the next country north of us. There's no extreme temperature change, so there's no tornadoes. There are thunderstorms and lightning, which I happen to personally enjoy, but that's the worst weather we get. As I said before, the oceans moderate the climate. The temperature over the course of the year really never goes below 70 Fahrenheit. In general, the country has two seasons: green season when it's raining, or usually in the evenings, sunny mornings, or dry season when it doesn't rain at all. The reason I was attracted to my part of this country is because the weather is exactly like Los Angeles, which I like very much when I lived there. So we're in the middle of the dry high season, which corresponds to winter in North America, which is why it's our high season for tourism as well. And we haven't had rain since Christmas, and we won't expect it to rain till May. Of course, climate change may be changing things, but so far we haven't had any super bad effects of that. The society, as I said, is welcoming, it's safe, it's stable. It's been a democracy for almost as long as the United States. Foreigners have equal rights the minute they arrive as a tourist, which is important for investors because you can buy property on vacation with your passport as your ID. There's no requirement to get involved in legal trusts or any special preparations to be an investor in Costa Rica. And you have fee simple ownership in your name, or you may choose to put it in a corporation. And we'll get into that later in the presentation. The country's very educated. It's very important. The children are waiting for the school bus every morning on the streets near where I live. There's almost 97% literacy here. Bilingual education is encouraged. There's an incentive in the jobs market to be bilingual for Costa Ricans because they get paid more, which also contributes to the fact that my English is still my primary language and my Espanol es poquito. There's no armed forces. They had a civil war that ended in 1948 when they decided they didn't want an army to be threatening the government in any way. They've not been involved in any external wars. There's been no internal revolutions. And as I said before, it's very difficult to own a gun. So what we have is national police and a Coast Guard. And between those two entities, they can handle all police matters. This is an overview of Tamarindo, which is a global hotspot. This is where we stayed on our first vacation because everybody knows it's a global hotspot. It's a surfing center. You can see the wide, beautiful beaches, and usually it's on everybody's itinerary for their first vacation. Where I live now is got a little less commotion. It's about 20 minutes north of Tamarindo in another larger beach town called Playa Flamingo. As I mentioned, the people here are generally happy. They live a long time. The Pura Vida spirit is called, keeps everybody sort of in line and helping each other. People, strangers, if they see you in trouble, like especially with your car, flat tire, run out of gas, they will stop and offer to help you, which is really refreshing. It's been called the happiest place on earth in surveys. We mentioned the blue zone. I'll get into the healthcare system in detail in a little few minutes. My experience with it, because there's a national public health system and a parallel private healthcare system. I've used both. It is far and away the best healthcare I've ever received in my life, including the United States. And it's much more reasonable price as well. I'll get into those details later. And of course, they're crazy for the World Cup, which is why I use this picture. And Costa Rica was in it the last couple of times. And of course, everything stops when there's a game involving Costa Rica. Oh, here we go. The healthcare system. The public system is called the Caja. It's also the Social Security system. It provides retirement for people, etc. It's a tiered system where you're assigned a community clinic, which is your primary place to go to receive care or to say, I need someone to look at me. There are local community hospitals in every province that you can be referred to if you do require something more intense. The technology is state of the art. There's no feeling that you're any sort of primitive system whatsoever. In the public system, the creature comforts may be a bit lacking because they focus on the technology and the level of care. The payroll deductions finance the public system just like we pay Social Security in the United States, but the premiums are low. As a retired person here, I have full access to the system, the public system, for $50 a month. And I can share personally, I was diagnosed with prostate cancer in 2018. I went to a private physician that was referred by my local private clinic. He told me my options were surgery, chemotherapy, or radiation therapy. He thought radiation therapy would work. The only provider of the radiation therapy is the public system, so he referred me to the tertiary care hospital in San Jose with the equipment. I received 20 treatments over 4 weeks. I was cured. This was 6 years ago, and the cost to me was zero. Wow. Because the country's priority is keeping people happy and alive and healthy. It really, really bends your brain to understand that this can work. The private system is sort of the US model. It's a better caring attitude than the US. There is private insurance if you'd like it here. Everything is still much less than the US. Pharmacies are approximately 25% of US prices. The only thing you need a prescription for are narcotics. If you have a prescription or you know you need any kind of regular thing that a doctor in the US has to write a script for, you can walk into the pharmacy and ask for it, and they ask you, how many would you like? It's really refreshing to be trusted as a patient who knows what they need. I also took advantage of anti-aging clinics here because I'm an elderly person. And so I've been on a program of hormone therapy and sort of better diet control. And I'm older than most of you, but I feel really fantastic. It's all part of the package of living here. And then last but not least, dental care is unbelievably good. It's, again, much less costly than the US. So I advise people coming on vacation, if they need something complicated, root canal, some sort of oral surgery, that they add a couple extra days to their vacation and get it done here, because they'll probably be happier than the result in the US, and it will cost them a lot less out of pocket. These are pictures of the various facilities. The large building in the top photo is the tertiary care hospital where I received my radiation therapy in San Jose. The other buildings are local clinics and hospitals, and SEMA is the premier private hospital if you really feel the need to go to that hospital because of a specialist you might need, etc. It's all very available. Okay, visiting. It is a top vacation destination, and it's known for its surfing, which is why this is the intro slide. Of course, COVID is present with us. It was a very serious problem here when it was a serious problem in the rest of the world. Again, the National Health System is on top of it, and the Ministry of Health. Although there's no restrictions now, the borders were closed back in the dark days of COVID. Okay, prime time to come is the high and dry season if you're in the Central and North Pacific, where I am. That's, as I said, December to April. And it's, of course, when you want to escape from frosty and the snow. The Caribbean side has a different high and dry season because of the climate pattern. It's August and September. And the southern zone I mentioned down by Panama has its own high season, which is January and February. And it's not to say that when it rains, it's terrible, because it's not, imagine the torrents of rain in a jungle setting. It just rains enough each day, or, 4 to 5 days a week in the afternoon or evening, to keep everything green and lovely. And you still can go to the beach for sure in the morning. And then the beaches aren't the only feature. There's all sorts of activities depending on your interests. In the season when it is raining, there's water in the rivers for river rafting. You can be elevated in the mountains on hanging bridges. There's wildlife tours and river tours that will take you places where monkeys will crawl on the boat, and you can see crocodiles, right in the water next to you, if that's what you're interested in. Again, in addition to the beaches, as I said, hot springs near the volcanoes, the mountain elevations have opportunities for trams and zip lines. There are active volcanoes, although they're not flowing with lava. They're sort of huffing and puffing, and you can get tours to them as well. And then different areas have their own rainforest experiences. This is a picture of the Arnall volcano, huffing and puffing, which is the major tourist attraction in the country for people seeking the volcano hot springs experience. We did have CIPS institutes here. I did 11 of them in a row, 11 years in a row when I was president of the Real Estate Association. I'm not sure we'll have them again. Last year, why we thought was our last time, because the team was retiring. But I would encourage you to go to another country to take CIPS if it's offered and you can afford to go, because it's a great experience. And of course, everyone here, in terms of the association that was sponsored it, used it for networking and to sort of spread the word about Costa Rica among our colleagues who visited for the Institute.
For those of you who are not realtors watching this video, the CIPS certification, Certified International Property Specialist, is something to look for when you're working with real estate
Exactly.
professionals throughout the world, especially when you're looking outside of your U.S. boundaries, because they know how to work with international agents and how to connect.
And the non-realtors watching, encourage your realtor friends to get their designation, because it will open their world as well.
Yeah, exactly. It has for me.
Okay, just things to know if you're coming down before you leave home. Your passport must be valid for at least 6 more months from the day you arrive. This is to keep people from staying in the country, overstaying their passport, and being unable to return. The airlines check your passport at the gate before they let you board the plane. I've done this many times. And so if your passport is expiring in a couple of months after you're planning a trip to Costa Rica, please get a new one, or you could be denied boarding at the airport. Money here is US dollars accepted freely along with local currency. So you don't have to change, go to a currency exchange to get Costa Rican colones before you arrive. However, do not bring anything bigger than a $20 bill, because 50s and 100s can be suspected as counterfeit and be refused. Visa and MasterCard are preferred credit cards that work here easily. And I don't know if anybody uses traveler's checks anymore, but no one here accepts them. We do have 2 airports that you can arrive at, as I said. Liberia International Airport is the one closer to the Pacific coast near me. If you're looking for tickets, the 3-letter code is LIR. San Jose International Airport is SJO. And if you're of a mind to plan a trip like this, check with your airline. Most of them allow you to fly into one airport and fly out of the other as the same round trip ticket, as though you had gone to one airport. So you can plan to arrive in the center of the country, then take an adventure to come to the beach for a few days and leave from the airport near the beach. And I always recommend that to people who want to see the most of Costa Rica in a short vacation. Rental cars may not be necessary for your entire visit, particularly if you're just coming to the beach. There are prearranged shuttle services to your accommodation, and you can Look it up. It's a company called Ecotrans if you're coming to near Flamingo. That'll keep you from paying rental on a car you keep parked in a parking lot most of the week. You can rent cars at your accommodation and use them for day trips as you may need. They might put a very large hold on your credit card. This is to discourage people from driving the car to Nicaragua and selling it. And that is the absolute truth. Living and working here, you have freedom and you also have responsibility. This is a picture of Tamarindo from an elevated position. Building on the right is a very contemporary condo building. The smaller image of a building is one that was built when I arrived 20 years ago. It's a very popular rental investment because it's across the street from the beach. A lot of people come down here and put their toe in the water by buying a condo, hiring a property manager, putting it on the rental market to see if they can make money with it. And of course they can. The occupancy rate can be as high as 80% because there's not enough hotel rooms to meet the demand of the visitors in the country. This is a statistic that the government publishes annually. And currently they estimate we are short 3,000 hotel rooms across the country, which is why there's such a market for vacation rentals in people's homes and condos. So how you can stay once you're here. You come on vacation and you decide, I'm going to come back and check it out for 6 months. You can use your passports to enter and stay for, now it's 180 days. They raised that. I'm sorry, I didn't edit the slide. After the 180 days, or as the 180 days is getting close, you can get another 180 days by crossing a border and getting your passport stamped. You can do this indefinitely. I did this for the first 5 years I was here. We were close enough we could go to Nicaragua for lunch or for the weekend. We often went to Panama to try the resorts in that country for a weekend. There's an island in the Caribbean called San Andres, which is actually Colombia, which counts as visiting another country. We went to Guatemala. We did a lot of things, sort of postpone the process of residency. But when we really, really realized this was home, we were going to be here for the rest of our lives, we started the residency process. There's many categories which help sort of grease the wheels. You should hire an expert in immigration who's a lawyer. And I can give you, any one of you, a recommendation for the best immigration consultant in Costa Rica. But in general, the categories are buy a property of at least $150,000 US, have a pension of at least $1,000 that's permanent, and you can direct it to a bank here. You can invest in a business. You can have a baby here. And this is something that 2 women I know who are realtors did, because once you have a child in Costa Rica, it's a dual citizen, and the parents get residency to take care of a Costa Rican citizen. And then, of course, you can marry a Costa Rican citizen. All of the categories of residence require that you do participate and join the CAHA, which is the public system. But as I told you earlier, it's a tremendous deal and the care is fantastic. To work here, you need to be a legal worker. And so that's one of the reasons they check the passports at the border, and there's immigration raids in restaurants and sort of service businesses where U.S. college students can overstay their visit and try and get a job. It's not legal for anyone to hire an illegal worker, but it still happens. So as we said, there's all the ways to get your residency. Legal worker status comes to you when you have your permanent residency. The first step of residency is temporary. You need to be here for approximately 3 years and not get in any trouble. And then you're offered permanent residency. I've been through this process. And after you're a permanent resident, if you are here another additional 8 years worth of time, basically, and haven't had any problems, you're offered citizenship. So I have become a Costa Rican citizen, and I'm now a dual U.S. Costa Rica citizen. I did that because I wanted a second passport. It's easier to travel in Latin America with a non-U.S. passport. I have a commitment to this country. It's my home now. My heart is here, and I wanted to let it know how much I appreciated it. There's also rentista status, which is sort of green card status. You can put approximately $60,000 or $65,000 in a bank account or an investment account. You need to draw it out at approximately $2,500 a month and spend it, and you can work legally once you've established that. You can own a business corporation that is quote unquote working here. so that you're able to work through your own corporation, but there's other rules of that. You must have some Costa Rican employees. They need to be on the social security system, the CAHA, and there is a payroll deduction or based on their salary, you can see that goes to pay for this status. Also, there's a little quirk in the way things work here. All employees get an extra month's pay in December. It's called
Nice.
aguinaldo, and it's sort of a year-end bonus, and it helps people get through the holidays. And so every employer needs to know that that's part of the responsibility to have in having employees. Labor laws do favor the employees, so you need to be careful who you're hiring. If it's, basically a disagreeable person, you might want to pass because you could wind up at the employment ministry with them complaining. Of course, you have to register to pay your taxes. Everything works here like the US. There's, deductions against your income, which are legal. And basically, if you're going to be in business and of any kind, and if you're going to use a business initially to be here legally, you need to have an accountant.
How complicated is it to start a business? Is it
It's very easy. If you can
okay?
create a corporation for less than $1,000 with a lawyer,
Okay.
and once you have that and you're on the legal system as the owner, you can use that credential to go open a bank account, do, any manner of business, hire people. So you can probably do that in about a month. My daily life, this is a picture of Flamingo. This is the closest beach near where I live. It's very beautiful. I'm very
Wow.
involved in this community. The bay north of the peninsula is Potrero Bay, which is, I live actually on that bay in the town next door called Playa Potrero. But this is a very typical Costa Rica coastline. It's really breathtaking. Of course, this aerial view isn't readily available, but you get the idea. As far as living expense, if you don't have a big mortgage payment or you're not making a big car payment, two people can live on about $2,000 a month. You just need to learn to shop like a tico, as I say here. You don't go to restaurants for every meal. You don't buy your drinks out in a bar and pay $12 for a glass of wine. You learn to live economically, but it is possible. The timing is such that there's never daylight savings time, and most people live by more of a farmer's clock. I'm usually waking up between 5:30 and 6. If that's early, I don't know if it's early for the audience. And it's dark here by 7 because there's no daylight savings time. So you're thinking about bed a lot earlier than I used to in Chicago. The country has evolved. It is a first world country, though it's small. People assume it's a third world, everything cheap country. We have
Mhm.
fiber optic internet everywhere. We have satellite TV. We have streaming. You can have Netflix here or Prime or whatever you want. The most interesting thing about the country is there's no physical mail. The offset of that is that everything is on the internet, which is a lot more futuristic than places I've lived before. So even if you don't have a computer or an internet access, as maybe a Costa Rican farming family might not, they can go to the bank or they can go to what's called the post office here, and people will help them accomplish their business online. So it's really, really, really accessible. One of the features of no mail is because we have no addresses. There's no street address like 123 Main Street anywhere. It's all relational. So your house might be 50 meters from the corner with Perla's restaurant, and that's how people would find you. It sounds maddening because you kind of have to go somewhere to find out where it is in the future, but it works. So there's no junk mail, there's no magazines, there's just nothing. Everything has to be on the internet for you to receive it. Now you can send me registered mail from the US and it will show up at what's called a post office, which is really a federal government office at which you can do many things, update your residency, get your ID card, blah, blah, blah. But it's really not easy to send a physical piece of mail anywhere. The other thing about living here is there's no chemicals in anything. There's no hormones in the food that's grown here. There's no weed killers or anything poisonous used anywhere. Weed killers are available, but you basically need dispensation from the Pope to get some. So you just learn to live in a chemical-free environment, which is great. They do have car inspection and registration. Every December 31st, by December 31st, everyone has to renew the registration of their car, which is also finances a general insurance system such that if you're in a car accident and the other driver doesn't have insurance, which is very unusual, the government insurance based on the registration fee will cover part of your expense. The banking is the one challenging thing here. Internet banking is preferred. You're not allowed to do internet banking from outside the country, which is why we'll get into why you need a property manager here. And the in-bank service can be slow, but you just plan your time and work around the fact that going to the bank isn't probably one of the few less than pleasant experiences in Costa Rica. Investing, and the message here is it's similar to the US practice, as you will see. It's safe, it's relatively easy, it's reliable. The only bad news for foreigners is there's a growing number, but a limited availability of mortgages. You need to bring cash. Okay, I'm using listings as illustrations for going over market practices. This is a very typical rental condo in the complex I pointed out earlier, across the street from the beach in Tamarindo. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, 1,600. Typically lists in the 500s and would be furnished. There's a very limited inventory, so recent sales would probably push the actual price of this into the 600s lately. In general, all property is priced in US dollars. As I said, sales are 90% cash, 80% of the buyers are from another country. The closings are extremely short. It's one signature in a legal book. My closing to sell my house in Chicago took all afternoon. Buying my first property here was over in about 10 minutes because it's so organized. There's a really unique asset here called the National Public Registry, Registro Público. It has all the legal data of the country online, available to anyone for free. And this is particularly important when it comes to property because you can look at the background of any property that you're considering before you actually make the commitment. And this is an asset for me as a realtor because when a seller is offering me a listing, I can look at the history of the property online and see if they're misleading me about anything like no mortgages, no liens, no pending lawsuits. They are actually the owner, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I can do a mini due diligence before I even take the listing. So in the case of real estate, every property that's titled has a unique ID. You can look it up by the ID or the location. The registro is available in multiple languages. Of course, I use English, but it's basically Spanish. It'll have the history of the property since it was titled. It will have links to check the owner or the corporation that owns it at the moment. And while I can give sort of a skimming level review, all the lawyers use this to dig into the detail, get into the weeds about every property when they're involved in the due diligence for your purchase. And the good thing about Costa Rica, it has a very evolved legal profession. It's based on the Spanish model, which is different than English, but the goals are the same and the techniques are the same. All the transactions have all the same elements. There's escrow, there's a closing attorney, there's due diligence, there's an offer, there's acceptance, there's a deposit. All of this is basically the same as the United States. English is available for all deals, especially in where I live, where everybody speaks English, but you can use any language in Costa Rica legally if the parties agree. There are exclusive listings now that have become dominant. When I moved here 20 years ago, it was all open listings because the Costa Rican culture, which was the basis of real estate, felt that open listings meant the most people could sell it. Many people learned the hard way. It means that nobody wants to market it. And so we've gotten to be almost all exclusive listings, which of course is what we all prefer.
That's great. And there's an MLS
Yes,
in Costa Rica?
we just had an MLS implemented. It's Omni platform, which I
Yeah.
understand is in
Mhm.
use in many locations in the United
Yeah, we
States.
have it at mine. Yes.
The Omni people seem very, very aware of the potential of foreign MLSs their sort of plans, I think they talk about publicly, is to become the MLS of Latin America so that
Yes.
all of us will be connected and all of our properties can appear on all the MLSs. Unofficially has the blessing of NAR. This is another condo project in my neighborhood, actually. It's a very typical project, 8 units, common pool, 2 bedroom, 2 bath condos with every residence, the kitchen, dining, living room is almost always a great room. So there's a spacious feeling when you walk in. And something like this today is probably closer to 300 than when I made this slide and it says 225. This is a penthouse. This is one of the premier buildings in Tamarindo. Again, a 2 bedroom, 2 bath condo, but with the price at least $1 million and probably higher now. So you get what you pay for it, like any place else.
Absolutely. And you're saying that there's an inventory crunch there as well, right?
Right. What I believe happened, which seemed when you all were getting offers over ask a couple of years ago, and our market was booming because all that extra cash came here and bought everything. Well, the construction hasn't kept pace.
Yeah.
So condos that, should have been one price might be, 1.25 price because they're the only one available with the ocean
Yeah.
view at the time. And so
Understood.
we're looking for developers. If any of the audience has developers who might be interested in establishing a presence in Costa Rica, there are many, many development opportunities, and I can advise them on all the issues of getting into it. Okay, the purchase process. This is a different listing in my neighborhood. Typical house, 4 bedroom, 3.5 baths, its own private pool, outside terrace, etc. But as far as the purchase price process goes, as I said, foreign investors have equal rights with Costa Rican citizens. There's no need to have special status. Assets can be held in your personal name or corporations. In the early days, people put things in corporations over liability concerns. Then the government got wise and they imposed a corporation tax on every corporation that was created. And so some people have throttled back and put property back in their own name. The corporation tax is only $300 a year, but people with multiple properties, it might be a appreciable savings to not have it in a corporation if it's not really necessary. There are transfer taxes and closing costs, the escrow fee, the closing attorney, just the legal process. And typically the closing costs will run 4% of the purchase price on average. The Costa Rican tradition is the buyer pays the closing costs, but since the US investors and Canadian investors came down, it can be a negotiable item. Escrow is true escrow supervised by banking regulators, title companies, and it's always been very reliable. In order to raise revenue, the country switched to value added tax like 3 years ago, which means the sales, quote unquote, sales tax is now applied to all goods and services provided in the country. The real estate service is paid by the commission. And so every commission now, I as a realtor have to collect 13% from my seller on every deal. And then I send the money into the tax authorities. So they're very smart here. They got 13% on all commissions with doing very little work to get it. But you got to keep the country financed with all the benefits that you have here. Taxes in general are low. Property tax is 1/4% on titled property. That's only $250 on $100,000 valuation.
Mm-hmm.
So you really can't beat it. This is another property, which is a sort of a dream property everybody's looking for, an ocean view house with an infinity edge pool. This is on a mountain near me. It's actually 2 houses now. This is my listing also, and we're currently asking 1.85 million, which is pretty reasonable. It'll probably go for 1.7 something. But you can see the view from the house is all the way back to the Lungo, and
Yeah.
you can even see Tamarindo dimly in the distance when you know what you're looking for. There's also raw land. It's available in lots, how lots to build a house, or fincas, which are ranches in Spanish. So you might find a 5,000 square meter lot, which is sort of the minimum basic lot for a house in the rural area like this, starting in less than 100, something with an ocean view. Like we just saw for that house could be 300 or 400 just for the dirt, but there's tons of land available. And if you want privacy and relatively easy access to the ocean, you can still find things. One of the things that's hampering development here is the government is trying to figure out the water resources in the country. There's plenty of water in Costa Rica, but it's just not all in the place where they want it. So the infrastructure is going to have to, because the biggest part of the country is the most popular place for foreigners to invest, and it has the dry season that infrastructure projects are going to have to bring water down from the mountains, and then your water permits and water letters will be more freely available. I use this slide to talk about financing. As I said before, it's historically not available to non-resident foreigners. Some of the banks are opening their policy and considering foreign borrowers for titles in Costa Rica. What happens here, and I know this is a little bit into the weeds about financing, because there's no agency like Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac to buy the mortgages from the bank and give them the money to keep lending, the banks hold the notes for the life of the loan, which makes them very reluctant to approve people without a very serious due diligence process on the borrower, which can take 6 months. So even if they tell you a local mortgage is available as a foreign investor, the timing of it may not help you close your deal. So that's why it's good to know you can always fall back on cash, or you sell property where you're coming from so that you have the cash, or you just finesse it. The exceptions are that if you find a seller or developer that's offering short-term financing, which is usually 3 to 5 years, and that will give you time to sell your property in the US after you've chosen to live here, you can do that. And there are some private lenders. These are hard money guys with short terms and very high interest rates. I don't recommend them. Okay, this is a focus on the area I'm in, which is called Potrero. The mountain is called Pacific Heights. It's called that because 3 gentlemen from San Francisco came down and bought the mountain and turned it into a residential development. And the name is, of course, the toniest part of San Francisco. There are 5,000 square meter lots, which is 1.25 acres, but you do not get 1.25 acres flat. You get a building pad for a house and the side of a mountain. So it meets the numerical requirements of the zoning. And you can pay, as you can see, from the middle hundreds up to almost 400 for a lot with a view like this. Okay, occupancy issues. Here we are. So, as I said, the basic property tax on titled property is only 0.25% per year. They do this to help Costa Rican families stay in their homes. The families often have legacy properties, particularly the rural areas, where the family accumulated a very large finca, and the children and grandchildren get pieces as they get old enough to need their own homes. So this rate keeps Costa Ricans owning their own property. To raise money, several years ago, they passed a luxury tax on properties with a level of improvement of certain values. I believe you need to have your property assessed if the value of the improvements exceeds, I think it's like $300,000. There's a higher tax rate to pay for property, but that higher tax rate is still only 0.4. So even if you wind up with a luxury property, property taxes aren't going to kill you. There's property insurance. You can buy it privately now, but the government is the insurer of last resort, and the rates are reasonable, and you can buy insurance that covers you for all risks except nuclear war and an airplane falling on it, because I bought this before. The government has its own insurance agents, so there's no price competition with anyone, and it's really the default insurance for everyone, unless for some reason you want a private company to cover you. There are all levels of professional services available. Property management is a way that many foreigners start working here. That's what I did first, to build a company that turned into a real estate practice. You usually charge a monthly fee of maybe $150 or $200 just to keep the property ready for rentals, pay the bills, watch it, and make sure it's in good stead no matter when the owner may show up. And then in addition, the property manager will charge you separately for maid service, which you can order as much or as little as you want, and other, fumigation, whatever other services you need. Vacation rental marketing is a huge business here. Everything is here. Airbnb, just you name it, Expedia. And if you're going to invest for rental income, even for part of the year. You may want to come and use it yourself, obviously, for a while. You really need to be in a professional service that has a big presence online. And then there's concierge support available. So if you're here and you'd like to have a chef make you dinner every night, you can get that kind of private attention. There are special laws for different parts of the country. There's a condominium law, which is very detailed and very prescribed as to how condominium associations need to function. Projects built with condominium regime, it's called, or under the condominium law, have to comply with a lot of rules. And before you buy, you can request to see the condominium association rules to make sure that you believe you can live under them before you invest. The first 200 meters of the coastline on both sides is considered the maritime zone. There's special rules for that. There's very few titled properties in the maritime zone. So if you have an oceanfront property, you can buy the title. That's kind of rare. All other properties are considered concession from the federal government. And for the right to be there, you sign a contract with the government for 20, 30, 40 years. You can build, you can own the house, you can sell the concession, but your rate of quote unquote property tax, which is called the canon, can be as much as 5 or 6% of the property value. So again, there's not a lot of Costa Ricans that own the coast. So they're, burdening the foreigners who want to be in that very special spot of this country. Okay, I mentioned fincas before. They are ranches. This is a 200-acre ranch that was owned by the most famous pool designer in Costa Rica, hence the pool you see in the picture. He was willing to take some part of it back. There's an extra caretaker home and a warehouse for his business. It was quite a value. It was about 20 minutes from the beach, but in a very beautiful setting. You can see in the woods and in the mountains. Currently, this is a development opportunity. This is, again, finca is a large tract of land. It's 46.7 acres with the view of Flamingo that you see. It's 8 minutes drive from a very beautiful beach. It has a registered well, and a developer could take this and create a condominium that would include 100 condos or houses plus commercial space. And it's on a public road, which gives you the most rights for development. So this is a hot one if you know anybody that wants to do a residential development. Okay, professionalism in real estate. This is another view of our area. This is the ocean in front of Brasilito, which is the town south of Tamarindo. We have all manner of professional associations represented, even though there's no legal licensing of realtors. The two associations, which are the two logos at the top, the Cámara Costarricense de Corredores de Bienes Raíces, is the original association, started primarily with Costa Ricans in San Jose. Costa Rica Global Association of Realtors is a spinoff that was started by a U.S. realtor who moved here. And this is the one that was president of for 10 years. And we did all the CIPS institutes. The associations have done what they can to professionalize the industry. All members now must be international realtor members of NAR, which obliges them to be under the standards of professional practice of NAR. Right. And they're both NAR bilateral partners. To be a realtor, you need to be a legal worker. If you're born here, you're automatically a legal worker. So anyone born here can be a realtor without any qualifications. So it's important, if you're surfing instructor or your taxi driver or your hotel bellhop says, oh yeah, I can show you properties, don't do it. Get online, look for the associations, and get a recommendation for not a licensed, but at least a qualified and certified and trained realtor in the area who is obligated to work as NAR realtors work in the U.S. Of course, with the involvement of foreign investors. I'm sorry, they're building a house next door. If that noise is too irritating, let me know. We do a lot of international outreach. We have a lot of bilateral memorandums of understanding. Some of the more important ones are Miami Association of Realtors, San Diego, South Bay, and LA. And I've spoken at a lot of these associations or been a presenter at their meetings and conventions, which was a great privilege. There is also an association of all Latin American associations, 16 countries, called SILA. And one of my dear friends was the president of SILA a few years ago. And it's also working in tandem with NAR to raise professionalism throughout the hemisphere. And there you can see that logo we have for the MLS. In addition to all these international professional relations, virtually every international franchise company is here. And so if you're familiar with any of those names, I'm sure you are, and the ones that are coming, everyone wants a piece of the action here. So if you're in a franchise and you just want to switch to the office here, reach out through your company. Referral practices are the same as the US, 25% to 30%. We work with standard agreements that you all can print out of your computers, or we can do here. You can refer buyers or sellers. One of the things I like to make sure that we're referring realtors understand, you're not allowed to make money in Costa Rica without paying some tax. So it's been great to share Costa Rica with you. We've been trying to protect it from realtors from other countries who try and work here without being qualified, and we've been mostly successful.
My goal is to help my customers who maybe want to, like I said earlier, live some other places in the world, retire or invest, to have professionals like you that I can refer to, that I know I can trust, and will take care of them well. And so, we'll continue to have conversations, and hopefully anyone that is interested in talking or getting more granular in any of this conversation with Allen, we can set up another introductory Zoom call and introduce you and help you see if your dream is to live in Costa Rica, to make that happen. Thank you,
Ray.
Allen. That was a very, very good presentation, very thorough, and I think my folks are going to really enjoy it.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate the opportunity.